The white man's original tactic of divide and conquer, separate and rule is still his most cherished weapon against African people. You see, understandably, when people look at America up until now being, quote unquote, the most powerful country in the world, if you want to get down with the most powerful country in the world, you're going to have to despise who they despise. And since America has done such a great job despising African people, anybody who wants to come to this country, even if they are African, are going to seek somebody else's company other than ours, right? That doesn't make what they do right. But we have to look at the fact that we as African people in America haven't done a whole lot collectively to make ourselves the power base we should be for all African people. With our education, with our income, being the richest group of African people in the world in terms of take-home pay, we should be the power base for African people throughout the world. Y'all need institutions, we're going to fund them. Y'all have a problem with your water, we're going to fund that. You understand me? You got a medical crisis, we're going to take care of that. We have the resources, we got the personnel, we got the expertise, we got the money. We should be the power base. So when an African comes to America from outside of this country, they say, well, wait a minute now. If I align myself with the African American, what is in that for me? Because I don't even see the African American doing anything for themselves on a collective basis. We have success, but it's all individual, right? There's very few institutions that we run and control independently. Let's take it to Little League. When you go for the Little League football team or the basketball team, do you go try out for the team that's losing every year? Or do you want to be on the championship team? Most children want to be on the championship team. So when Africans from the diaspora come to America, they see two teams, the black team that has lost 157 straight Super Bowls since the end of slavery, right? And the white team that seem like they still winning and doing great. I want to align myself with the white team. Now, the mistake that Africans in the diaspora are making is that if you do not link up with us, your national homeland will never be free either. See, what they do to African people anywhere, they do to African people everywhere. So if you come from Nigeria, you come from Ghana, you come from Jamaica, you come from Turks and Caicos, you don't associate with African people, you go get you a snow bunny, move up on the west side, you can do all that. But understand, your life is only as sacred as white people allow it to be. At any minute, they can turn you into a Breonna Taylor, whether you have a U.S. passport or not. You seen it happen here in New York City years ago with the Abner Louima and Amadou Diallo cases, where the police, abused African immigrants right here in New York City. So when it comes to white people, we're all African. They know who we are. But they will use one group against the other as long as it is in their best interest. And once they're done using that group, guess what they do to that group? They destroy them too. It's no difference than looking at the black community compared to black celebrities. They used Bill Cosby as long as they could. And when they no longer needed him, they turned on him. They'll use Whitney Houston as long as they could. When they no longer needed her, they murdered her. Michael Jackson, they murdered him. Prince, they murdered him. Jimi Hendrix, they murdered him. Kobe Bryant, they murdered him. You understand? So all of us are nothing but tools in the hand of white supremacy. We have to wake up from that nightmare, from that imaginary illusion of inclusion that has black people thinking, if I come to America, but stay away from African Americans, I'll be given probationary white status. You'll never be given probationary white status because you are not white. And when they're done using you for your intellectual knowledge, when they're done using you in the labor market, when they're done using you, helping to perpetuate the myth of a multicultural colorblind America, they'll bust you right back to the country you came from. All African people in America who are not practicing Pan-Africanism are simply tools that are being used that have an expiration date. And when your utility to the white power structure expires, you will too, and they will send you back home. And this is why they hate blacks in America so much, the white power structure. We're the only non-white people in the country who cannot be sent home. You cannot be deported. Slavery destroyed your cultural, psychological, and intellectual connection to your ancestral homeland. If the Ghanaian get on your nerve, he go back to Ghana. If the Puerto Rican gets on your nerves, he go back to Puerto Rico. If the Afro-Cuban gets on your nerves, he or she go back to Cuba, right? If the Chinese get on your nerves, send them back to China. If the East Indian gets on your nerves, send them back to India. If the Arab gets on your nerve, send them back to one of the Middle Eastern states. But when American Africans get on your nerves, where do you deport us to? You can't deport us. Slavery destroyed that connection that they needed in order to remove us. Most American Africans are so brainwashed, they think they're American. So you cannot deport them because this is what they identify with most. So in other words, the white man created his own problem, which makes it almost impossible to deport us. So the only way to get rid of us is a systemic system of racial genocide, and that's what they're using.
So what do you think about people, because a conversation or argument that I have is with, some Africans or Caribbeans is that they would say that Black Americans don't have any culture, right? Mm-hmm. Or they'll say that racism doesn't exist because I was able to come from my country and I was able to be successful and provide for my family. Y'all just using racism as an excuse, to hold y'all back or whatever the case is. Mm-hmm. Well, what's your thoughts on?
Well, number one, they're politically ignorant, socially inexperienced. They know very little about the experience of the American African. And they also don't understand racism. Mm. In order for racism to succeed, some Blacks must be successful. Mm-hmm. You need a LeBron. You need an Oprah. You need a Tyler Perry. You need a Sean Carter. You need a Beyonce Knowles. You need a Sean Puffy Combs. You need a Robert Johnson. You follow? Mm. Why do you need successful Black people if you want to destroy our Black people? Because in order to brainwash the other ones into believing that your failure is not due to systemic discrimination, it's due to the fact that you're not intelligent enough or you're not working hard enough. Mm. Do you see that? Right. So if Dr. Umar is a billionaire and you've been trying to get your business off the ground, it ain't popped yet. Yeah, you've been trying to get your corporation off the ground, it ain't popped yet. Mm. You didn't open up 10 business, they all didn't flop. Mm. You need me as the billionaire to come and say, fellas, it's not your fault. They designed the system to not work in your behalf. Mm. But because I love being rich and I love my proximity to white culture and lifestyle, I don't tell you it's not your fault that there's a game set up and there's only going to be a few Dr. Umars. I tell you the problem is yours. Obviously, you didn't do your business plan right. Obviously, the reason why the bank didn't give you the business loan is because you didn't have your numbers right. Your credit wasn't high enough. You see that? Mm-hmm. And so the Black millionaire and billionaire class is one of white supremacy's greatest arguments to defend itself against accusations of racism. Because Oprah Winfrey is not going to indict the system. LeBron James is not going to indict the system. You understand me? Tyler Perry is not going to indict the system because they made their money through the system. And because they're at the top of Black society, they know how powerful white folks really are. They know how unfair the game really is. Mm-hmm. They know me being here is a privilege that white people gave me. Yes, I worked hard to get here, but I would never be here without their help. Right. At the end of the day, all of our Black millionaires and billionaires are owned by the white power structure. I don't say that to be disrespectful because I respect LeBron James, right? I appreciate the image of a Black man with a Black woman with Black children who's never been in any trouble. Right. Entered the league at 17, 18 years old and never had a single scandal. He's a good example of a responsible Black man. Right. I like how Jay-Z came from Marcy Projects and now you're a billionaire the legal way. I like what Oprah did coming from nothing at Tennessee State. I like what Tyler Perry did coming from sleeping in his car to being a billionaire to owning the first all Black music studio, one of the largest in the country. Even white folk go to Tyler Perry Studios to film their movies. Part of Black Panther 2 was filmed at Tyler Perry Studios. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate their rags to riches story. The problem is they can't top it off with a cherry on top. Mm-hmm. And the cherry on top is to look the camera in the eye and say, I made it, but most of my people will never will because the system is not designed for Black people to succeed. And this is how they get us. They'll promote a few Blacks. Everybody else struggling, everybody else in poverty, everybody else coming out of prison, but they'll promote a few Blacks. And because a few Blacks made it, they're automatically supposed to mean that we are doing better. No other group you could push that on because every other group is based on collective group progress. Right. Black people, we are totally rooted in selfishness and meism. We don't have weism like the Latinos or weism like the Asians or weism like the Anglo-Saxons or weism like the European Jews. We have meism. And as long as we have meism, a few successful Blacks automatically means y'all all must do better. Like I think I saw Jay-Z do an interview one time and they said, well, what have you done for Black people? And he said something to the effect, and I don't want to misquote him, I'm paraphrasing. He said something like, me just being who I am
is enough for Black people?
Is enough for Black people. Okay. Most ridiculous, arrogant, ignorant statement I ever heard. But that's what black millionaires and billionaires feel. Because I've made it, I'm a benefit to my race. And it's that same ridiculous black bourgeoisie illogical thinking that ushered Barack Obama into the White House, who did nothing for black people but steal everything we worked for and give it to the gays, the immigrants, the Latinos, and white women.
A lot of people don't. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I said, so what do you say about like selective people that selectively black, or they want to seem like they support black people? And black people are like, we're forgiving to everybody, right? We always give opportunity.
Except each other.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we handle that? Or should we still be supportive? Or because
Give me an example of someone who's selectively black. Give me an example of.
Right.
Like people that like kind of pick and choose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was saying that as far as like groups, different people. Okay, so like let's bring even a reparations situation. So there's a lot of groups of people, like people from Jamaica or people from the Caribbean. They're not black, but now they're hearing that reparations is a possibility. They want to be black now.
I would argue they are black. I would argue they are African.
But they're not. Prior to that, they say, I'm not black. You get what I'm saying?
I understand. Okay. I don't identify with y'all, but when there's a benefit to be obtained, I will.
Yes.
Temporarily.
Yes.
Until I get what I need and just roll off the boat.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyone who is disingenuous about their membership in the African race should be rejected from it. I don't believe in part-time Africans, Half-Africans. I don't believe in opportunistically Africans, right?
Definitely.
Like what you're speaking of, selective Africans. If there's something that I can select that will be a benefit for me, I'll be African for a week, for a day, for a year until I get it, and then I'm not African no more. I reject all of them.
Okay.
Whether that's a Jamaican African or an American African.
Definitely.
Because you got black folks right here who are the offspring of our enslaved ancestors who don't identify as being black. For me, blackness is a two-pronged test. First of all, are you biologically African?
Definitely,
And are you psychologically African? So if I look at some of my Puerto Rican African brothers and sisters, or some of my Dominican African brothers and sisters, many of them are biologically black, but they do not psychologically identify with the race at all.
Definitely.
Many do, but more often than not, they don't. And so for the ones who do not identify, I don't accept. I don't believe in begging, pleading, or forcing people to be African. You follow what I'm saying?
Definitely.
It's an honor to be God's original people. It's an honor to have the strongest DNA. It's an honor to be the oldest people, the most creative people. It's an honor to be who we are. We're
Definitely.
God's first children. We are the chosen people. So I'm not forcing nobody. If you think being ultra light skinned is a benefit, run with it. You understand? If you think speaking Spanish makes you better than black people speak English, you run with it. Or if you're an American Negro like Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who goes out of your way to support the white power structure at the expense of African people, you run with that. You follow me? Anybody who wants out, I'm letting them out. Because the worst thing you can do is force a black person to be black when they don't want to be. Because the minute they get a chance to stab you in the back, they're going to do it 2 times. You follow me? So anybody who don't want to be, you're free to leave. And let's deal with the people who are 100%
But
24 hours a day unapologetic.
And if you say this to our aunties, our grandmas, they're going to forgive them. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, let them back in. You get what I'm saying?
But the issue...
But don't you think?
Well, let me go back. Let me take a step back. For me,
this
should only be one reparations movement anyway. I don't support the tribalistic approach to reparations where the American Africans got their own fight, the Caribbean Africans got their own fight, the continental Africans got their own fight, the Australian Africans got their own fight, the Brazilians got their own fight, Central American Africans, We all came from one place, one place, and it should be one organized system for reparations. The reason we don't have a global approach to reparations is because everybody favors the tribe over the race. And that is why Pan-Africanism is so revolutionary, because we're the only ones to say that being African is more important than being a Jamaican. Being African is more important than being an American African, a descendant of a slave. Being African is more important than being a Brazilian. Until you elevate the family above your nationality, then we'll never get what we need. You have to have a unified approach for something as important as reparations. And I'm going to be honest with you, and this is something that a lot of us are not looking at globally or locally, and that is what we are demanding for reparations, you normally only get through an act of war. If we get all that we are entitled to, it'll be the first time in human history that one group of people received from their oppressors that type of a settlement, that type of a resolution without no bloodshed. People go to war for less than what we're owed in reparations. And I'm going to be honest with you. I believe it's going to take war for us to get it.
But so what about...
They will give you reparations, but it will not be anything near what you were entitled to.
Because I'm familiar with the U.S. paying, obviously, the Native Americans,
the Japanese,
the
European Jews.
Yeah, exactly. So, of those...
And they give reparations to people who they haven't even harmed, like the Afghanis, the Ukrainians, and everybody else.
Right. So, how should reparations be paid? And, why do you think that, because there was a poll recently where they asked, non-Black, Americans or just non-Black people if Black people deserve reparations, and overwhelmingly they said no. So why do you think that non-Black people said these are non-Black people?
Non-Black people.
Why do you think they don't think that Black Americans deserve reparations? And how would you go about giving reparations to Black Americans?
Good question. First of all, why does the opinion of an Asian matter at all? You are not an enslaver. You are not an enslaved. You understand me? Why? What does the opinion of someone who had nothing to do with my tragedy, why does their opinion even matter? I'll tell you why it matters. America wants to create this illusion of a multicultural society where race don't matter. And America knows, because everybody wants to be here so badly, they don't have a problem shitting on Black people to improve their relationship with the white power structure. So if you ask the Asian, do Black people deserve reparations? Of course not. You ask the Arab, do Black people deserve reparations? Of course not. You ask the European Jew, who got reparations? Do Black people deserve reparations? Of course not. But we should not be surprised. If I don't value Black life, why the hell would I care about you receiving compensation for unpaid labor, damages, and harm? They don't value African life. So of course they don't give a damn about you getting no reparations. You understand me? Right. Because they're not approaching this question from an issue of justice or perspective of justice or equality. They're approaching this question from a perspective of racism, bigotry, bias, and discrimination. Right. Nobody wants Black people to get anything because they want to take your place. You understand me? The Asian don't want you doing better than them in America. You understand? The Arab don't want you doing better than them in America. The European Jew don't want you doing better than them in America. The Latinos don't want you doing better than them in America. So of course, if somebody put a microphone in their mouth and say, should Black people get something that you're not going to get, why would they say yes?
They prefer us to be a punching bag.
Absolutely. And my question is, it's none of your business.
All right.
This is an issue between Black people and white people. What the Chinese man thinks is irrelevant. What the Latino thinks is irrelevant. What the European Jew thinks is irrelevant. What the Arab thinks is irrelevant. You're not the enslaved or the enslaver. Who the hell cares what you think about it? But because we're so multicultural, the power structure can use those non-Black opinions against us. Because they can say, since you see the Latino as your brother and sister, since you see the Arab as your brother and sister, and we are all Americans, because Black people love that Americanism, which is another reason why we're not going to get reparations, because the white man knows you would rather be an American and get reparations. If you got to choose between the two, most Black people want that red, white, and blue flag more than anything else, right? And so as a result of that, the power structure can then say, since you consider yourself to be a part of the family of America, most of us don't think y'all should get reparations. So why don't we put it on the next federal election and see how many Americans think Black people should get reparations? And then they could just block out the whole thing and say most Americans don't think this is a good thing for the country. You see? And you know how they were able to do that? Because we started identifying with this country more than ourselves. We should have never bought into this American citizenship garbage. We should have never allowed that. Just like we should have never bought into people of color. We should have never bought into minority. We should have never bought into disadvantaged communities. All of these are labels
umbrella terms,
that clump you in with all non-white people that allows the government to take care of their needs and never take care of yours. Right. And nobody even see you not being taken care of, because guess what? Your issues are being smothered by Arab issues, Latino issues, Chinese issues, homosexual issues. So nobody even realized Black people still suffering because you allowed yourself to be defined in such a way that other groups were included with you. That's the worst thing you can do as a people with such a unique history as we have in this country. We have to stand up and stand out like a sore thumb. But because most Black people have been brainwashed by church that being race first is a sin, right? And because most Black people have a low racial self-esteem problem, the last thing they want to do is stick out. We are too neurotic about being Black. We are too insecure about being Black. We are too anxious about being Black. We don't want to stick out. We want to blend in. And that's how that multicultural weapon was used against us.